It's good to have you join us. Let's begin with electricity. Nigeria's energy supply rose by 3.6% to 99,881.49 megawatt per hour on Sunday, 3rd April 2022, compared to 96,438.51 megawatt per hour recorded in the previous day. This is according to data obtained from the website of the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN. On the other hand, Nigeria's electricity generation peaked at 4,302.6 million 6 megawatt on Sunday, 3rd April 2022, representing a decline of 2.5% compared to 4,411 megawatt per hour recorded on Saturday, 2nd April 2022. Meanwhile, off-peak generation on Sunday surged by 11.2% to 4,060.4 megawatt compared to 3,651 megawatts recorded in the previous day. The volume of energy sent out to electricity consumers in the country represents 98.9% of the total 100,991.41 megawatt per hour generated on Sunday, which is higher than the 98.84% on Saturday. Oil prices inched higher on Monday as worries about tight supply persisted, even as investors eyed the release of supplies from strategic reserves from consuming nations and a truce in Yemen spark hopes that supply issues in the Middle East could abate. Brent crude futures were up 9 cents to $104.48 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was at $99.30 a barrel, up 3 cents. Both contracts slipped $1 when markets opened on Monday. On that note, let's take a trip to the commodities market. Now to the issue of the day. A decree signed by Russian President Vladimir Putin stipulates that Western countries must start paying for gas through a Russian bank that will transfer foreign currency into rubles. Under Putin's plan, foreign countries will open accounts at Gazprom Bank to pay for Russian gas. And failure to comply, he said, he would suspend gas supply contracts. The decision came into effect on April 1st. Joining me to discuss more on sanctions being contemplated on Russia and the economic implications on the global economy is Professor Sam Ndoga. Is a research professor at the University of Pretoria, associate faculty at the Center for Creative Leadership, and adjunct at the International Leadership University, co-founder of Africa Private Sector Summit, and director at several companies, and president Organization of Women in International Trade. Wait, Blessing Irabo Oza. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Okay, let's first of all start with Prof. Europe's dependency on Russian energy has prevented the bloc from imposing an oil embargo on Moscow. Now, with payments in rubles, how will this play out?
I think what we need to realize is that if you're a student of political science, since 2006, the Ukraine crisis was already playing out. And in other words, Ukraine is one of those countries that has this insurmountable natural resources compared to other European counterparts. What is Russia doing? Russia is really creating, a way in which they can be advantaged alongside what Ukraine could do. So if you're going to strengthen your economy by certain political moves, that's exactly what's going on here. So what are they doing is they're also crushing the international dependency on the greenback. Based on that, what are we going to see if China and other countries follow suit where there is no longer any necessity to benchmark against the US dollar? The world economy is never going to be the same again.
Okay, what are the likely consequences for this?
I think if you can already see that based on what's happening, the World Trade Organization has already reduced the global economic growth from 3.6% to 2.4%. The impact is already being felt just by a move like this. And there will be further consequences. Russia called upon the Africa-Russia summit 2 years ago. And what does that tell you? That we are in this interdependent relationship, just not with Russia and the continent, but we are a global village. So this is going to be felt globally. So this is not a localized or a European crisis. This is really a global crisis.
Okay. The value of ruble sank in wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But this policy seeks to prop up the value as Germany and Italy describing the move as a breach of contract. Any wins for Russia?
I think if they are going to insist on this particular policy and somehow force everybody else to follow suit and honor this, you probably see that's why nobody is directly attacking Russia, but are imposing sanctions. And I don't think these sanctions are going to necessarily disable Russia. Russia is simply responding to the sanctions by putting sanctions of their own without calling them sanctions. They can call them whatever they want. So this is a stalemate we're going to have globally, where depending on what you throw at Russia, they're just going to throw back whatever they can. So ultimately, I don't think there's a win-win. We're going to be forced to have a negotiation.
Okay. Blessing, you advocate for opportunities for women in international trade. The war in Ukraine is changing global trade protocols and agreements. How positioned is the African woman in terms of opportunities and challenges?
First and foremost, the war in Russia and Ukraine is really not really an opportunity for the African woman. I just have to be frank. Because most of the minerals you have in Africa and in Nigeria, they are not developed. And if we have to look at how would this benefit us, it means we need to go back to the drawing board. Like now, you get some fertilizers from Russia. The major component of production of fertilizer is gotten from Russia, which is the potash. We have a lot of minerals in Nigeria and in Africa. If we want to really have we really want to take these opportunities of war, first and foremost, our minerals have to be developed, which is capital intensive. The investment capital, you and I know, that is not there. We've been pushing for even financing for women. And how much can you get to set up an industry? Now, look at the cost of production. The oil and gas has gone up. For you to even get diesel now is about $6.70. Is affecting production. And between me and you, between a short time, a lot of businesses will be shutting down and women are going to be more affected. The only thing the government can do is to push out funds into the society where we could set up modular refinery. We have women in oil and gas, is an organization. We have women who can come together and set up, there's not a full-fledged refinery, but they can set up a modular refinery for production so that you and I can get the common petroleum that we need. The gas today, you used to buy 12.5 kg at 3,500 naira. Today is 8,000 naira. How can you survive on that on production? Then going back to the stable food, these are areas where you and I know that a lot of women are playing there. The production of bread and other confectionaries like cakes and biscuits and some other small things. You get the drum wheat from Russia. And with this war, you are going to have an increment and hike in flour. You remember during Obasanjo's regime that Pharaoh came up with a formula of the 10% cassava flour to bread. They even went as far as 70%. A lot of factories set up. Then cassava price skyrocketed instantly, and most of these companies closed down. And women have been doing try and error in terms of using cassava, but you need a lot of technology to develop this new technology so that it can be accepted in the country. It is high time for us to look inwardly, and it's time for the central bank to really look at women-owned business to support them in terms of providing financing for them, not the finance in paper. We should be responsive when it comes to gender laws regarding women in this country. Without doing that,
Okay,
we're going
you mean
the
the cassava option should be back on the table?
Yes.
Okay.
Should be back on the table. A lot of women are doing try and error with the cassava production, but still we are not getting it right because the bread is so hard. So
but is it getting the much needed acceptance by the public?
Once you have a bread that is soft, when you did that cassava to bread, it was so thick, it was strong. So people couldn't accept it like the normal flour. That is why you need a lot of research to go into that and for you to start having it, for people to accept it in the first place. We need to work on the new product you are looking at.
Okay.
We can all have fertilizers. When you have plants and waste food, they are fertilizers. But how many can you get from this?
Okay. Prof, the EU plans to cut Russian gas imports by 2/3 before the end of the year. What is the implication of this to both Russia, the EU, and Africa?
I don't think that this is a sustainable move by the EU. Given the total reliance on Russian gas, it might just be a political maneuvering, a testing of the will to see if Russia will keep a stance. Remember, this is not a political move per se, it is economic. So a test of the wheels is going to be around what ultimately is going to transpire. Right now, it's just ideas being thrown to see, the developments thereon. But if you realize that there's a total dependency on Russian gas and you're talking about cutting back on supplies, you need to have at that point prepared alternatives. Now, I'm not so sure where those alternatives are going to come from, because although we're talking about, a third or 2/3, it's still a very significant amount that will need to really be created elsewhere. So at this point in time, I think it's just a matter of time to see where these tactics are going to land us. I don't think anybody can predict at this moment to say this is what's going to happen until specific directives have been adopted as a way to settle this crisis. So this war is not Russia invading Ukraine for political reasons. It's Russia invading Ukraine for economic reasons.
Okay, what's the solution for Africa?
I think the solution for Africa, firstly, is for us to develop an ecosystem within an intra-Africa trade.
Okay.
This idea of always looking elsewhere first, we're going to pay for heavily. And also, even when you look at the fact that you can have an Africa-Russia summit, I mean, it's one country inviting the entire continent onto the table. It means that's a skewed, negotiation. Africa should be hosting, African nations should be hosting European nations one-on-one. But if you can have 50-some nations being invited to a trade agreement by one country, that tells you that we have not valued who we are and what we have. In fact, our leaders should not even honor some of these summits. They should be actually saying, no, we are the people with the raw materials that everybody else in the world needs. Ultimately, we don't actually need anything from anybody because the concentration of natural resources is on our continent. So why are we being dictated to by people who simply process what we have? So like Blessing was saying, if we can actually come up with ways to process what we have, we're going to cut off those ties of dependency on from outside the continent. So the solution is upgrade our systems.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Sam Ndoga from Johannesburg.
You're most welcome.
Okay. Now, okay, Blessed, what alternatives should we begin to look out for? And do we have the financing and capacity to adjust as soon as possible?
Thank you for that question. Like, when you listen to the professor, we have to look inward. It is not a matter of choice now, it's a matter of urgency. The African Development Bank has signed a lot of MOU with different African countries. They're coming together. We need to put finances into production, into processing our raw materials, instead of exporting them raw and bringing them back finished. If that's the only solution right now. We no longer need to send out our crude oil. We need to set up refineries to process this crude oil. We need to develop our minerals so that we can have all the required raw materials that we have. Talk about, Nigerian is playing a lot of gas. Why can't we develop that sector instead of bringing in gas?
Okay.
Refine petrol here and have it. Energy, let's look at alternative. We have different raw material. We have different raw materials for solar energy. You have the wind, you have the water, you have the different plants that can work on alternative energy instead of depending on buying those things.
Okay, let's look at alternative energy. Or alternatively, let's look at different sectors of the economy. Thank you very much, President, Organization of Women in International Trade, Blessing Erabo Oza.
Thank you so much. And I don't think, is that the last question, or I just say something?
You've answered it. Thank you very much. Now moving on, Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Professor Isa Ali Pantami, and the President of Microsoft, Brad Smith, have agreed that establishing the African Digital Center in Lagos and the Artificial Intelligence Cultural Heritage Project to give global access to 3 Nigerian languages are crucial to Nigeria's digital transformation. Chidima in the BC reports that that Microsoft is expected to expand its operations in Nigeria and boost the transfer of digital skills to youth across the country in a multi-level approach.
We're committed to building out digital infrastructure here. We're committed to internet connectivity. We have 3 partnerships now moving forward to expand broadband connectivity in different parts of Nigeria. So we believe in the future of Nigeria.
On behalf of our government, I want to give you our assurance that there are 36 major initiatives to support ease of doing business.
Investors stake 13.5 billion naira in equities as indices dipped by 0.2%. Moblanda Kok has details.
Investors on the Nigerian stock market lost 58 billion naira in the trading week ended Friday, 1st April 2022. The week recorded 3 days of gains and 2 days of losses. 1.2 billion shares worth 13.5 billion naira in 22,118 deals were traded by investors on the floor of the exchange. The NGX All Share Index depreciated by 0.23% at 46,842.86 basis points. Market capitalization dropped to close the week at 25.253 trillion naira. All indices finished lower with the exception of NGX Premium, NGX Lotus 2 and NGX Sovereign Bond indices, which appreciated, while NGX Athem and NGX Growth indices closed flat. The financial services industry led the activity chart, followed by the conglomerates industry, and the third place was the ICT industry. Fidelity Bank, Transnational Corporation of Nigeria, and Access Holdings were the top 3 traders for the week. A total of 4,448 units of exchange-traded products ETPs, valued at 478,868.63, were traded in the week in 23 deals, as well as 35,517 units of federal government bonds. 20 equities appreciated in price in the week. 50 equities depreciated in price, while 86 equities remained unchanged.
Now, thank you, Muplan. Let's move to global market. European markets cautious on further Russia sanctions as Chinese tech stocks in Hong Kong jump as Hang Seng Index rises 2%. Bosade has more on the markets.
Hello and welcome to the Global Market Review. Markets in Europe are mixed on Monday as Western powers prepare more sanctions against Russia following allegations of civilian massacres in Ukrainian towns. DAX was 0.04% high, FTSE 0.17%, and CAC 40 0.50%. In Asia, investor sentiment may have been sustained by a recent signal by Chinese authorities of progress towards resolving an audit dispute that has threatened US-listed Chinese firms with delisting. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index led gains among the major Asia-Pacific markets on Monday as Chinese tech stocks in the city jumped. Nikkei 225 in Japan swung between positive and negative territory in Monday's trading before closing 0.25% across 27,736.47. While markets in mainland China are closed on Monday and Tuesday this week for holidays. U.S. stock index futures were mostly flat on Monday as traders monitored bond markets warning signals about the economy. Futures contracts tied to the Dow Jones Industrial Average traded marginally higher at 0.05%, S&P 500 0.15%, and Nasdaq Composite also topped 0.33%. Africa markets were mixed, with South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40 and Namibia's overall index posting gains, while Tunisia's Tunidex was negative. Other markets were muted. That's the Global Market Review. I am Bosede Able.
Thank you, Bosade. Business Express returns Tuesday. I am Musa Abubakar. Thanks for watching. No matter where you come from, no matter your religion, we are one.